Here we go again. Donald Trump walks back his tariff threats against Canada and Mexico for another 30 days. But will the back and forth ever end?
And Doug Ford gets ready to slap a steep tax on electricity sent to more than 1 million Americans, regardless of the pause.
And one person is still missing after a devastating fire in Bowmanville. We'll take you live to that scene tonight.
This is Live at 5. Hello, I'm Arda Zakarian.
And I'm Lena Latafat. Thank you for joining us and welcome to Live at 5. We continue to follow breaking news. Donald Trump's unprecedented trade war has taken another turn tonight. The president is pausing tariffs on most Canadian imports.
In the latest twist in the cross-border dispute, Reuters is reporting that Trump has decided to delay the 25% tariffs on goods that are compliant under the Canada USMCA trade agreement. This applies to both Canada and Mexico until April the 2nd. Trump signed the order late today, but he doubled down on the tariff talk.
We don't need cars from Canada. We don't need energy from Canada. We don't need anything from Canada.
And the U.S. Commerce Secretary called Prime Minister Justin Trudeau a numbskull while speaking about tariffs at an event in New York City today. Listen to this.
As President Trump has said many times, tariff is his favorite word. I would say that reciprocal is probably his second favorite word. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to be open to the idea, if you want to be a numbskull like Justin Trudeau and say, oh, we're going to do this, then tariffs are going to go up. But if you want to sit back, have a discussion with the Commerce Department, USTR, they all have my phone number too. I am happy to have a discussion with our foreign counterparts that says that here's what we think you were doing.
A Canadian government source tells Reuters that Washington was upset because Ottawa had retaliated.
And let's bring in CP24's Lindsay Biscaya for more on these latest developments. It is hard to keep up, Lindsay.
It really is hard to keep up. Things are changing hour by hour because this kind of olive branch was extended to Mexico earlier today, not Canada. And now that has changed and it is being extended to Canada. It kind of shows that kind of maybe lack of confidence that U.S. President Donald Trump and the White House has in this tariff plan, maybe expecting Canada to back down. But Canada has been so strong and resolute, saying that it wants all tariffs not imposed before it backs down on any retaliatory tariff. So the latest that we're getting this hour is an update from Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc. He posted on social media a statement. We'll read part of that for you now. Basically saying that the second phase of tariffs, which was supposed to be implemented later this month, will now also be held off until April 2nd. So that's another $125 billion worth of U.S. products. But Dominic LeBlanc also saying that Canada will continue to work for the removal of all tariffs. That is the bottom line here. The real goal from Canada is not some kind of deal between the U.S. and Canada in terms of which tariffs are removed or lessened, but to have no tariffs at all, as originally stated in these free trade agreements. So we know at this point that this latest tariff exemption includes potash. It includes a lot of agricultural goods. For Ontario, it's not really good news, though. Premier Doug Ford was saying today that 62% of goods from Ontario are not included under that free trade deal, and most energy isn't either. So that 10% levy on energy being exported to the U.S. also not included. This is really hitting businesses hard. And we spoke with the president, Dan Kelly of the CFIB earlier today about how businesses are really struggling to keep up with this ever-changing list of rules. Here's more.
This is just nuts. Hardly the way to run an economy or trading relationships, and the U.S. government is causing just chaos for Canadian business owners at this hour. Look, it's good news that there's any relief for anyone in Canada from U.S. tariffs, but for a small business to try to make hide nor hair of the rules changes by the hour is a full-time job.
And we know about many businesses now, Arda and Lena, are saying that really this uncertainty and the threat of tariffs is basically almost as bad as having the tariffs imposed in the first place. So now April 2nd is that deadline where more tariffs come into place and also more retaliatory tariffs, the second phase from Canada. Again, obviously, as we've seen today, a lot can change between now and then.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this, Lindsay. We'll continue to follow the bouncing ball. And we are following breaking news out of Queen's Park, where Doug Ford isn't backing down on charging 25% more for electricity shipped to the U.S., despite the 1-month reprieve.
Let's go live to CP24's Beatrice Vaisman. Beatrice.
Lena, Arda, the premier is saying either back down completely, eliminate the threat of tariffs altogether, or this is going ahead. And so full throttle, this plan to impose 25% surcharges on Ontario electricity exports to New York, Michigan, and Minnesota still plan to go ahead on Monday. We don't know how exactly it's going to happen. Why? Because the legislature is not sitting. No bill or piece of law can be signed to make it happen. But the premier's been meeting with cabinet ministers even today. Minister Vic Fedeli, the Minister of Economic Development, Trade and Job Creation, was here. And late this afternoon, we caught Minister Stephen Lecce, who's in charge of the energy portfolio, leaving the Premier's office as well. He wouldn't answer our questions, simply saying more information will come out Monday, specifically on how all of this is going to work. The Premier was on Fox Business late this afternoon. Here's what he had to say about this trade war that just keeps on going. The goalposts keep moving, and that's a big source of frustration for him.
I feel terrible. 3 great governors, get along well with them. Great people, and I apologize to the American people. There's one person to be blamed, and this is President Trump. You know, he said he's going to postpone the tariffs. Well, he said that before, and 2 days later it changed, a few days later. And I learned one thing: you touch a stove and you burn yourself, you don't touch that stove again. And 62% of our goods coming into the U.S., they don't fall under USMCA. What I recommend is let's sit down and hash out a deal with USMCA, and let's move forward.
As for American liquor, we were in an LCBO store earlier this week when U.S. alcohol was taken from the shelves. No more Napa Valley Red, no more Kentucky Bourbon. And I'm told by the Premier's office it is all staying off of the shelves until, again, the threat of tariffs is off the table altogether. As for what it's been like as the president keeps moving the goalposts, the head of the Automotive Parts Manufacturing Association, Flavio Volpe, who was here meeting with the Premier with other leaders in the auto sector today, saying it kind of feels like you're waiting to be punched in the face. You know it's coming, and it just keeps getting delayed. And so I asked Flavio what he was doing here today, how the meetings have been going, and what he makes of this situation with the U.S. president in general. Listen.
I think the Premier has struck a very good chord, both for the auto sector, but then also for all the investments that Ontario companies have made across the United States. So we're going to talk a little bit about the tens of billions of dollars of investment that Ontario companies have made in 26 U.S. states with 48,000 jobs there, so that the next time Letnick calls them and says these are Michigan jobs, he can tell them these are Ontario jobs for the last 120 years. We can pull ours back too.
So again, Monday morning, we expect to learn more details from Premier, possibly from Energy Minister Stephen Lecce, as to how this plan is going to roll out. But as of right now, Ontario is still planning on adding these 25% surcharges to energy exported to those 3 states. Impacts 1.5 million Americans. And just on Tuesday, the Premier said he won't hesitate to pull the plug altogether if the threat of tariffs or actual tariffs continue into April as well.
All right, Beatrice, thanks so much for this. And for more reaction to the latest developments in this trade war, we're joined live now by Sharon Kaur, partner at Sovereign Advisory. She was also the deputy chief to former finance minister Bill Morneau, who dealt with NAFTA negotiations when Donald Trump first took office. Sharon, thank you for joining us. Look, I think to a lot of people, this feels like an abusive relationship you just can't get out of. How do you process all of this back and forth?
Well, there's a severe case of whiplash going over here, just like it is for all of you probably, because everything seems to be changing by the minute. And you know, I got to give Flavio, who just had on, a lot of credit, because he has been carrying the lion's weight of pushing back when it comes to the auto sector. But what we're finally seeing now is that Canada kind of has come back together united and said, this is not okay. What's happening is not okay. This is not a rational person. None of this is reasonable. We currently have an USMCA deal that Donald Trump was part of signing, and it's fair game to renegotiate that, but to randomly throw tariffs here and there and then claim that it's because of fentanyl and illegal migration, which we know is bogus, it's mind-boggling. Like, it's frankly mind-boggling, and it is so hard to keep up with, because what might be relevant now will be different in like an hour from now.
Sharon, you've dealt with U.S.-Canada trade relations before. You were part of the NAFTA negotiations. How would you deal with Donald Trump?
Oh my goodness! I don't think anyone with a rational mind can have a good strategy. I was joking with another journalist earlier, and I'm like, he needs some good loving from my immigrant mother, and just send her down there, and she'll be happy to have a conversation with him. But to be honest, listen, the Donald Trump that we dealt with in the administration we dealt with the last time around, it's very different. He seems to be he seems to be completely disgruntled this time around, because this is his second term. He won with overwhelming numbers and kind of feels like he can do anything and nothing is wrong, even saying lies. Like earlier today, he put out a post on his True North social stating that this whole tariff discussion is actually Prime Minister Trudeau's ploy to stay in office. We have a leadership race that's coming to an end on Sunday. That's bogus. Like, it's all fake news in his own terms. So I don't think there is really a one solution. I would say that while it's good that the government at all levels has come out to be firm and to push back, we're seeing that with Doug Ford, with the Prime Minister. We have to be very careful not to poke the bear and try to insult him. If we're going to talk about things, keep them factual, keep them based on his economy and our economy. But let's not poke the bear, because if you blink in the wrong direction, he will add 50% tariffs on Lord knows what.
Well, it sounds like we kind of have poked the bear, Sharon, because we're hearing from a Canadian government source telling Reuters that Washington is upset with Canada because of the retaliatory tariffs. I think a lot of Canadians, when they listen to that, they think, well, why wouldn't we retaliate? But what does that tell you about this administration?
Well, I think it's a couple things. Now, yes, they are upset, but we also have to remember that Donald Trump has no respect or, quite frankly, admiration for our federal government. We knew that from the last time around. We have a leadership candidate in Chrystia Freeland who has openly said she is the one to fight him because he does not like her. That type of stuff doesn't actually help when talking to him. What does scare him and move him off is when he realizes that his own community and his population is going to get hurt. And we're seeing that with Ontario threatening prices on electricity, taking the booze off LCBO's shelves. So the things that actually make him budge are the things that will have impact. Now, we do have some poking the bear happening, but it has to be done at a very delicate level, because what I'm hearing from folks down in DC is they just don't like Trudeau. And I'm hoping that maybe by Sunday, whoever comes into place, some of this can be tempered down, because we can't keep doing this for the next 4 years.
Okay, Sharon Kaur, partner at Sovereign Advisory, and also the former deputy chief to former Finance Minister Bill Morneau. Thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Yes, it's now 5:13. This is Live at 5.
Coming up after the break, one person is unaccounted for after a fire in downtown Bowmanville. We're going to get an update on the investigation. Plus, we'll have community reactions. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Canadian Olympian turned suspected drug kingpin Ryan Wedding has been added to the FBI's list of the 10 most wanted fugitives.
Wedding is accused of operating a network that routinely shipped hundreds of kilograms of cocaine from Colombia through Mexico, the U.S., and Canada. The FBI says he is responsible for the murders of 4 people in Ontario and is offering $10 million for information which leads to his arrest.
One person is unaccounted for after fire tore through several buildings in downtown Bowmanville.
CP24 Steve Ryan is at the scene on King Street with the very latest. What more are you learning about this person who's still unaccounted for, Steve?
There's not a lot of information, Lena, with regards to the identity of that person, or if, in fact, they have been accounted for as of right now. But our last information that was given to us both by the police and by the fire chief himself, and that was that there is one person who lives in this historic building behind me here has not still been accounted for. So there's some 17 hours since this fire first broke out, about midnight last night, and Clarington Fire are still on scene here, and they continue to hose down the hotspots with water, making sure that all the fire is out before they actually clear this location. Now, this is a historic building in downtown Bowmanville. I spoke with a family who owns a very popular restaurant that was in that historic building that was destroyed as a result of the fire, and got their reaction to what had happened. Their reaction was very optimistic. They were just happy that there weren't people injured, and they said that they can always repair their business. Here's more from the family who I spoke with just a little while ago. Take a listen.
One day at a time, I guess. I mean, you kind of just figure out where you're at, make plans, and move forward. You never know what life's going to bring you, so you got to deal with what comes your way.
We're all very devastated about everything that's going on. I got a call at 12:14 last night from one of my sons that actually lives in the apartments up there that there was a fire, and basically everything has been ruined.
It's a crazy time right now. It's nuts to see, like, you're cooking one day, the next day the building's on fire, but I'm glad everyone's safe. Like, I have an employee that lives upstairs. Unfortunately, it's gone now, but as a small town, we stay commuted. Everyone's together. We're staying strong.
Talk of the Town was the name of their very popular restaurant here in town. And lastly, the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office are the ones taking the lead in this investigation, and they, of course, will determine the cause, the origin, and the circumstances surrounding this fire. I'll set it back to the desk.
Steve, thank you so much for this. Police are now saying yesterday's massive fire in Yorkville is suspicious.
At least 6 buildings were destroyed and multiple others were damaged after a 3-alarm fire tore through Century Homes on Schollard Street near Bay and Davenport. This is what it looked like after the fire. It's believed to have started at a home under construction, and it quickly spread to neighboring buildings and cars. Many of the damaged buildings have been converted into businesses, and officials believe the dollar loss will be significant. Schollard Street remains closed today for this investigation. Here's the latest from fire officials.
We're currently holding scene. We've got 3 apparatus on scene, including myself, car 31. We just had hydro show up this morning, so obviously they had to disconnect the lines. They were heavily damaged by the heat and the flames from the fire yesterday. So they're showing up this morning. They're going to be hooking up the hydro on the north side of the street this morning. Also, we're hoping to get 4 of the cars that were parked on the south side of the street across from the fire were heavily damaged by the heat. So we're hoping to have those towed this morning.
Just hours prior, police responded to an arson call in the area of Davenport Road and Avenue Road, just a few blocks away from Schollard Street. Toronto police have arrested 38-year-old Mark Lamoth. However, there is no indication that the 2 incidents are related.
Well, one person is in hospital after a car crashed into the front of a store in Etobicoke.
Take a look at this. Crews responded to the crash around 10 o'clock this morning at this store near the Queensway and Tamil Avenue. Paramedics say that one person was transported to a local hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. The details surrounding the incident are not yet known.
5:19 - 2. This is Live at 5.
A live look now near Queen and Dufferin, where CUPE members are holding an information picket ahead of Monday's strike deadline. The latest on talks coming up next.
Welcome back. Members of CUPE Local 79 are set to hold an information picket this hour. Nearly 30,000 of the city's inside workers, they could walk off the job Monday if a deal isn't reached.
Let's go live now to CP24's CJ Liu, who's outside a community center in the Queen and Dufferin area. And CJ, we can already hear the chants behind you.
That's right. Workers here are shouting enough is enough, that they won't back down. And that is the messaging ahead of the strike deadline, which is Monday at 12:01 a.m. Workers are prepared to walk off the job. And that means March break camps, recreation centers will shut down if the strike follows through. And joining me now is Shlomo Roth. He is one of the street outreach workers with the city. Shlomo, you've been working with the city for about 2.5 years now. One of the big issues is wages. How do you feel this when it comes to your day-to-day role?
Well, I can tell you that wages is just one of many issues that represent the austerity that's been imposed by successive mayors of the city, and it's time that has to end because the under-resourcing of the programs that people in Toronto rely on is endemic, and it's affecting materially the product that's available for the people of Toronto. So wages is just one issue. It's an important one because I just had a child. My wife and I just had a child, and we don't know if we're going to be able to raise the child in the city where we were raised, even as I work for the city itself.
And City Manager Paul Johnson, he has said that March break camps will be shut down along with recreation centers, but that warming centers, shelters won't be impacted. As someone that works in that environment, do you believe that to be true?
I find it interesting that he thinks that after years of understaffing and people like myself and my colleagues doing more than our jobs and just getting things done, he thinks that without any of us, some of the managers who have either never done the job or haven't done it in years are going to be able to fill in. And honestly, the city has a choice. They can do what's right. They've been dragging their heels, slowing this process down because they think that they're going to wait us out. But I think that what's happening here today and what's been happening around the city and the conversation I'm having with workers around every division should show them that we're serious and we don't want to strike. The workers don't want to strike. The city has a choice. They will either make a fair deal and take their job seriously, or they're bringing a strike on the city. It's not our choice.
Understood. Well, thank you so much for your time today and your insight. And a quick note about the numbers. The city gave its final offer on Tuesday afternoon. It includes the elimination of all minimum wage, as well as a 14.65 salary increase over 4 years. And that figure is higher for certain positions like childcare aides and personal support workers. But the latest that we're hearing from the union is that the final offer falls short on their wage demands. Back to you, Lena and Arda.
Yeah, that is a sticking point for sure. Sija Liu, live at this information session. Thanks so much, Sija. It's now 5:25 minus 2. Let's get a check on the drive home with CP24's traffic specialist, Adjoa and Siayabwa. Hey there, Adj. How goes the drive?
It goes slowly, Alina, and I'm still watching a little bit of a problem that is impacting the commute. It's on the southbound 400 ramp that takes you to the eastbound 401 collectors, right at the end of the on-ramp. It's just a stall, but it's a truck, and they're waiting on heavy tow. So it's been there for a bit, and it's really impacting the drive for commuters that are coming off that ramp and trying to get onto the 401. Now, headed on the 401 West, we had some problems through Victoria Park in the collectors. It was a stall. It was in the center lane. Situation there did all clear. And the QEW, just as you head through Bronte, we were dealing with the problem. See if I can punch it up. Yeah, it's off to the side now. Toronto-bound QEW right at Bronte. Collision was in the right lane. Got cleared over to the shoulder, so a little bit of good news. Not so good news if you paid a bit of extra money and headed on the eastbound 407, the exit ramp that does take you to the 427, the right lane blocked with an ongoing crash. I'll send it back to you both.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
5:26 minus 2. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, a memorable beer commercial from 25 years ago has been revamped in light of the trade war, and it's garnering a lot of reaction. We'll tell you more next. Welcome back. The iconic I Am Canadian Molson beer commercial from 25 years ago, it's been updated to reflect the times.
They mistake our modesty for meekness, our kindness for consent, our nation for another star on their flag, and our love of a hot, cheesy poutine with their love of a hot, cheesy Putin.
Does his voice jog your memory a little bit? Actor Jeff Douglas, who portrayed Joe Canada in the beer ad 25 years ago, can you believe it's been that long, said in a social media post that he created the new We Are Canadian video with his friends. It's racked up more than 350,000 views on YouTube in less than 24 hours.
And 25 years later, that message still resonates in such a big way, especially in light of everything going on. 5:30 minus 2. This is Live at 5.
Donald Trump is pausing tariffs on some Canadian imports. We'll have reaction coming up. Riding the Trump tariff roller coaster, Donald Trump walks back his tariff threats against Canada and Mexico for another 30 days. Will the back and forth ever end?
And Doug Ford gets ready to slap a steep tax on electricity sent to more than 1 million Americans, regardless of the pause.
And the union representing tens of thousands of city workers is holding an information picket this hour. A strike would result in the closure of March break camps across Toronto.
You're watching Live at 5. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lena Ladefat.
And I'm Arda Zakarian. Welcome to Live at 5. Donald Trump's unprecedented trade war has taken another turn tonight. The president is pausing tariffs on most Canadian imports.
In this latest twist in the cross-border dispute, Trump has decided to delay the 25% tariffs on goods that are compliant under the Canada-US-Mexico trade agreement. That applies to both Canada and Mexico until April 2nd. Trump signed the order late today, but he doubled down on his tariff talk.
I'll tell you what's a high tariff nation is Canada. Canada charges us 250% for our milk product and other product, and a tremendous tariff on lumber and things as such. And yet we don't need their lumber. We have more lumber than they do. We don't need Canada's lumber.
The U.S. Commerce Secretary called Prime Minister Justin Trudeau a numbskull while speaking about tariffs at an event in New York City today.
As President Trump has said many times, tariff is his favorite word. I would say that reciprocal is probably his second favorite word. And I think we have to be open to the idea, if you want to be a numbskull like Justin Trudeau and say, oh, we're going to do this, then tariffs are going to go up. But if you want to sit back, have a discussion with the Commerce Department, USTR, they all have my phone number too. I am happy to have a discussion with our foreign counterparts that says that here's what we think you were doing.
And Canada is responding to this pause with a pause of our own. Let's bring in CP24's Lindsay Biscaya for more on this. Lindsay.
Yeah, so that's kind of the latest that we're hearing this afternoon, Arda and Lena. A statement from Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc, who posted tonight. We'll bring out that statement for you now so you can see exactly what it says. But basically, he's saying the second phase of the retaliatory tariffs from Canada, which were set to go in effect, I believe, on March 24th originally, are now going to be paused and held off until April 2nd, which, again, is when these rounds of tariffs implemented by the U.S. are now supposed to take effect. If you're following along with all of this. So those retaliatory tariffs, the second phase, that would be $125 billion worth of U.S. products. But Dominic LeBlanc finishes that statement by saying that Canada is going to continue to toward the removal of tariffs completely. There's the statement for you. You can read it there. But basically, that's the latest from the Canadian government. And we've seen this flip-flop really from the U.S. This latest development starts to show some cracks in the U.S. plan, as if the White House maybe isn't confident about what it's doing and didn't realize the backlash and the backfire that it was going to get, because Canada is standing incredibly resolute on what it wants and will not negotiate very much, it seems, in terms of this trade war. So we're continuing to get reaction today, including from the business community, who is really hurting from this. We spoke with the CFIB president, Dan Kelly, earlier today, who says there's back and forth. What's going on, when these tariffs are going to be imposed, when they're not going to be imposed. That keeping up on that for business owners is a full-time job. Here's more.
As we understand it, though, most agricultural goods will now be exempt from tariffs, and that certainly is good news for Canadian producers of agricultural goods, and for manufacturers. A good deal of them that do go through the formal process of becoming USMCA compliant or CUSMA compliant, they will have some relief, at least for the next little bit. But we've got steel and aluminum tariffs coming up, then another round of across-the-board retaliatory tariffs from the U.S. planned for April the 2nd. This is not easy stuff.
So most energy, I'm not sure if Dan Kelly just touched on that, most energy is not included under the free trade agreement. And we know that Premier Doug Ford appeared on several U.S. media outlets once again today, and he said that 62% of goods coming out of Ontario specifically don't fall under that agreement. So still not very good news. Again, that exemption is until April 2nd. And as we know in this trade world, that's a very long time from now. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Every day, something different. Thank you so much for this, Lindsay. To Queen's Park now, where Doug Ford isn't backing down on charging 25% more for electricity shipped to the U.S., despite the 1-month reprieve.
Let's go live now to CP24's Beatrice Vaisman and the Premier doubling down. What did he say today?
Yeah, the Premier not backing down, Lena and Arda, and certainly even the reporting that Lindsay just did on Dominique LeBlanc's statement about Canada's position doesn't change what the Premier and what Ontario is doing either. They are changing the course. The Premier essentially saying enough with moving the goalposts. As he put it today, if you touch the stove once and you get burned, you're not going to touch that stove again. And so the Premier ultimately saying, Lena and Arda, either completely remove the threat of tariffs, period, or these retaliatory, essentially 25% tariffs on exporting energy from Ontario to 3 states. They are coming. Those 3 states being New York, Michigan, and Minnesota. I had a chance to speak with the Premier earlier this afternoon. Here's what he had to say.
He did this before. Remember, he said he'd do it 1 month, 3 days later, a week later, he puts the tariffs on. So as I always say, you touch a stove once and you get burnt. You don't touch that stove again. The only deal is drop the tariffs unconditionally, sit down, and let's start moving on the USMCA deal.
And so 1.5 million Americans rely on Ontario energy. The Premier saying just yesterday he spoke to the Governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, expressing his apologies ultimately that this is something the Premier he feels he needs to do because the goalposts keep moving and because we keep having the same conversation every 30 days. The alcohol that was removed from LCBO shelves, the American wine, for example, from Napa Valley, the Kentucky bourbon, any U.S. liquor, they are staying off of LCBO shelves until the threat of tariffs is removed entirely as well. The Premier, busy day here at Queen's Park, met with several cabinet ministers, including Energy Minister Stephen Lecce, seemingly to talk about how this is all going to shake down on Monday when it comes to the electricity announcement. He also met with members from business leaders from the auto sector, including the head of the Automotive Parts Manufacturing Association, Flavio Volpe, who yesterday used the analogy, it's like waiting for someone to punch you in the face with these tariffs. You know it's coming, it keeps getting delayed, and so just do it already, he said. So here's a bit of what Flavio Volpe told CP24 about the meeting happening here today with the Premier.
You know what, I've been around a long time. I don't remember the last time the Secretary of Commerce called the Premier of Ontario and said, in however he put it, let's negotiate. It means that the Premier here is making an effect and they're hearing him. And what he's saying is, we have some cards to play too, and we don't want to play them. You'll force those cards. Don't do it.
So as for the energy announcement, we're hearing that we will learn the details on Monday. The Premier, the Energy Minister, pretty tight-lipped about how it's all going to go down, saying we'll learn more information. Then it sounds like it's going to come from a minister's directive from Minister Stephen Lecce. As you can see behind me, Queen's Park, quite quiet today. MPPs not sitting because the legislature isn't in session, considering we just had an election. But it looks like the Premier and his cabinet have found a workaround. So again, Monday we'll learn all the details as to what that actually entails. Back to you.
Okay. Beatrice Vaisman live at Queen's Park tonight. Thanks, Beatrice. Let's take you south of the border now for more reaction. We're joined live by Eric Ham, CTV News political analyst who's standing by in Washington for us this evening. Eric, the mind games are never ending. What do you make of this latest twist?
Yeah, again, what we saw is Donald Trump has once again blinked on these tariffs, and he blinked because he sees that this is going to be just as bad for the United States as he wants it to be for Canada. We are seeing every crevice of the American economy actually beginning to lose job market. The stock market is continuing in free fall. In fact, we know today it closed down 400 points. Businesses are deeply concerned. And also, more importantly, we're seeing consumers also being hurt. And so clearly what Donald Trump has done, again, is he has decided to actually delay these tariffs. But But again, the uncertainty continues to cause problems for business because now they do not know if these tariffs are actually going to come into effect in 1 month or if Donald Trump is going to actually move the goalpost once again.
Eric, Donald Trump, I would say, is maybe not the word is difficult, but you don't know how to deal with him or how he's going to react. Do you think Canada having a stay on its retaliatory measures, and also we heard from the Premier, the LCBO is not removing or is continuing to remove the American alcohol. There's going to be 25% tax on the electricity that's going out to 3 states. All those things are remaining in place. Do you think that's the right strategy given as to how President Donald Trump reacts?
That's a really good question. We don't know, in fact, how Donald Trump will respond. We know he's very mercurial, but also more importantly, we know that he's also extremely thin-skinned because, again, we have to remember these tariffs are not simply about good policy or good business. In fact, what is driving these tariffs, what is driving Donald Trump to do this is the disinformation that he continues to put out about the trade deficit that the United States and Canada hold, which we know simply is not true. In addition to that, we know that there is a deep personal animus that Donald Trump has for the Canadian Prime Minister. And maybe, just maybe, when the Prime Minister exits the stage, maybe there can be a fresh start. But right now, it doesn't appear as though this is a move that is going to be beneficial for Donald Trump, either business-wise or, more importantly, politically.
That has been so interesting, seeing Donald Trump take on Justin Trudeau. As you noted, the U.S. Commerce Secretary just called Justin Trudeau a numbskull. So there's name-calling, there's bullying happening here. What is it about Justin Trudeau that Donald Trump doesn't like?
I believe this all goes back to about 6 years ago when we know Justin Trudeau was caught on that hot mic mocking Donald Trump. I believe it could have been the NATO summit, an event, or it was the G7. I'm not sure which one. But Donald Trump has never gotten over that. In fact, we see how Donald Trump responds and even reacts to Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum versus the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. But also one other thing I think that Donald Trump is attempting to do or was hoping to do with these tariffs was to cause tremendous economic hurt for Canada. Because, again, Donald Trump is on this expansionist aim as any other strongman would attempt. And he believes that he can actually force Canada into submission to become a U.S. state. And I think that's the ultimate goal. But clearly, it just isn't going to work because the economies are so intertwined, unfortunately.
Eric, thank you so much for your time and for your analysis. Eric Ham is CTV News' political analyst.
I'm sure we'll talk soon again, Eric. Thank you.
It's now 5:54 -2. This is Live at 5.
And a live look now near Queen and Dufferin, where CUPE members, they're holding an information picket ahead of Monday's strike deadline. The latest on talks coming up next.
Welcome back. Members of CUPE Local 79 are set to hold an information picket this hour. Nearly 30,000 of the city's inside workers could walk off the job on Monday if a deal isn't reached.
And that could mean a lot of parents would be left scrambling right before March break. Let's go live to CP24's Sija Liu outside a community center in the Queen and Dufferin area. What are you hearing tonight, Sija?
Well, we're hearing from workers that they are prepared to strike if a deal is not reached by 12:01 Monday. That means childcare centers city-run childcare centers across the city will close, along with March break camps impacting around 4,600 children. And for more on this, I'm joined by Bryn St. Clair Waters, who is with the group Parents for Childcare. She is here in support of the workers today. Bryn, a lot of the conversations when it comes to this potential strike has been childcare. The kids that won't get to go to March break camps, what will people do with their daycare? Why are you here in support of the workers?
Yeah, thanks so much. So I'm Bryn and I have a daughter. She's 1.5 years old. And I decided to join today because the work that city workers do, taking care of our kids and running affordable recreation programs is so important. And we know that the absolute foundation of quality care for our kids is that these workers actually get paid decently and have decent conditions. So, I mean, childcare workers are amazing. They do amazing work. They're the reason my daughter's happy all day, that she's taken care of all day. And so we just want to come out as parents and say, we support you. Like, thank you for fighting for fair wages and a fair contract. Thank you for fighting for better care and conditions for our kids at daycare.
What is the message that you would have for other parents right now who are feeling a bit anxious and are scrambling for potential childcare next week?
Yeah, it's really stressful finding care for your kids and making plans. So I think my message right now is show as much support and solidarity for these workers now. Let's send a clear message to Mayor Chow now and her team that now's the time to invest in public services. Now's the time to support these workers. And let's avoid a strike. Let's make sure they get a fair contract before that deadline.
Thanks so much, Bryn. Appreciate your time. She is with Parents for Childcare, and the deadline for this strike is Monday, 12:01 a.m. Back to you.
Thank you so much for this, Sija. Appreciate it. Let's check on the commute now with CP24's traffic specialist, Adjoa. Adjoa, how are the roads looking deep in rush hour?
Oh, we're in the heart of it, Arda. If you're making your way out on the major routes, things have been slow going, but, a couple of problems clearing. We'll start with problems which continue but are off to the side, so a little bit of good news for commuters on the 401 East. So this is the eastbound 401 in the Express, just through Yonge. It is the stall. It's off to the side. For the longest time, it was in that right lane and still dealing with quite the delay, though, from the 427. Northbound Don Valley Parkway still jam solid as you make your way home, starting from Don Mills up to the 401. And if you're traveling towards the Gardner, just take a look at it. Pretty busy as you exit and actually make your way into the downtown core. Again, you can blame it on the long-term road work creating all sorts of headaches, and it continues as you head into the downtown core. I'll send it back to you both.
Thank you, Adjoa. It's 5:15 -2, and you're watching Live at 5.
Coming up, we'll take a closer look at how the trade war is impacting travel plans for Canadians.
Welcome back. It appears Canadians are rethinking their plans to head south of the border amid all this trade tension with the U.S. and a really weak loonie.
We're joined live by Amra Durakovic, head of PR and communications for Canada for the Flight Centre Travel Group. Thank you so much, Amra, for joining us. Tell us about what you're seeing and if you've ever seen anything like this before. I mean, it takes a lot to make a Canadian angry.
Absolutely. So certainly since November, we have seen a slight softening in travel to the U.S. And this is sort of what we saw as typical. Every time there is a new U.S. administration, Canadians were rather conservative. So we do sort of have a wait and see approach. And that's where we saw sort of a 20% increase in cancellations of pre-existing bookings from Canada to the U.S. However, fast forward to February 2025, we've actually seen a 40% decrease in bookings from Canada to the U.S. as compared to the same period last year. And this is as a direct result of the U.S. administration's tariffs, but also our Prime Minister encouraging Canadians to not travel south of the border.
And it sounds like a lot of people are listening to that advice. So I just have to ask you, if these people are not heading to the U.S., where are they going instead?
Well, for March break specifically, I can tell you that our top 5 destinations are Mexico, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, St. Lucia, and cruising around the Caribbean. We love our sun. For the summer, however, we have noticed an increased demand for Europe, and that's year to date. So the first 2 months of 2025, more and more Canadians are booking for Europe. And that really aligns more broadly with the travel trends. We have Air Canada, Air Transat, Air France, and even WestJet are increasing connectivity between Canada and Europe. So you're going to see Europe will be the hottest destination. So if you're thinking of a summer vacation, now is the time to start planning. In fact, our booking insights at Flight Centre indicate that you should book a minimum of 90 to 120 days to get the best travel deals.
Amra, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate Amra Durakovic, head of PR and communications for Canada for the Flight Centre Travel Group.
Thanks so much. 5:55 -2, you're watching Live at 5.
Coming up, Justin Trudeau is reflecting on his tenure during his final days in office.
Welcome back. Justin Trudeau was emotional while speaking in Ottawa today in what was one of, if not his final, press conference as Prime Minister.
He was reflecting on the ups and downs of his tenure.
On a personal level, I've made sure that every single day in this office, I put Canadians first, that I have people's backs. And that's why I'm here to tell you all that we got you.
So quite teary-eyed there. Trudeau has just 3 days left as Liberal leader, with the Liberal Party of Canada poised to name the winner of a leadership race this Sunday.
It's now almost 6 o'clock, 5:59 -2. This is Toronto's breaking news, CP24. We will continue to bring you the latest developments in the trade war. Thank you for watching. CTV News at 6 is next.